Hi, I'm Bill Snow, the National Sales Manager at Lubin,
And I'm Brent Centel, Technical Director.
and we want to talk to you today about the eFlush water regulator. So I'm going to act like we just got this in the mail. We're at a farm, and I'm just going to unpack this. So I got my regulator, I got my stand tube, I got a parts package. I'm going to dive into this first. So first thing I noticed in this parts package, you have you have a basic kind of a hanger here. You have the squared around that you put onto the you hook onto the 22 millimeter pipe, and then you have the inlet pieces here. The one thing I do want to point out is the rubber seals. First thing I do when I open one of these parts packages is I put these seals on my inlet end and the stand tube. Okay, so Brent, I want to ask you, when I pull one of these out of the box, first question I always have is, where does this stand tube, where do you attach the stand tube to the regulator?
Well, the nice thing about our design here on the top shell is you have the words inlet and breather imprinted on to that top shell. So it's pretty self-explanatory. But in general, your inlet port's going to be on the side of your flush knob.
Okay.
And your breather end is going to be on the opposite side.
Okay. So let's take that off. We're just gonna put this on here. So this is the inlet end. This is the incoming water, the incoming water to the regulator. And then on the breather end, I'll just, and how tight do these need to be? I mean,
yeah, generally hand tight with just a quarter turn on a wrench is fine, but you definitely don't want to over torque that.
So you definitely want to have that seal in there. Sometimes I go to farms and the seals aren't in there. That's like the first thing I do is I put those seals on there. But okay, so now we have the stand tube in the right place, the inlet in the right place. Okay, Brent, the next question I have, and some questions I get, is this a single outlet regulator or is it a dual outlet regulator?
So the nice thing about the way we've designed this is it can be used either as a single or double outlet, and it only depends on the connector that you have here. In this case, we've got a plug on one port, and
Let's
so
take that off of there.
In this configuration, it's currently acting as a single outlet port regulator.
So if I wanted to, can I switch which side I use, or is it?
You can switch what side you use,
matter.
no problem.
Okay.
When you do want to run a regulator on the front end of your drinker section, you take this transition piece, which has got an O-ring, and it's got a keeper.
Okay.
And so you're going to push this in, and then you're going to see that keeper, and you're going to turn it so that that keeper and that keeper line up, and that's going to lock that transition piece in place.
All right. So, okay, my next question I have, I know these regulators, they work in standard mode and flush. How do I know when this is in flush, when it's in standard? This is a half turn. It's the new eFlush regulator. We've simplified the flush operation where it's just you're either in flush, and my question is that, am I in flush now, or am I in flush now?
Yeah. So if you remember the old adage, righty tighty, lefty loosey, in this case, when you're turned all the way to the right, righty tighty, it's normal operation. So that's allowing water to flow in, and it's regulating that pressure down.
Okay.
When you're ready to go to flush, lefty loosey, half turn opens that knob up, opens up a seal, and then bypasses that regulator, that bladder, so you're supplying line pressure through your drinker line.
Okay. So right, if I go all the way right, I'm in normal operation.
That's correct.
Which the regulator is regulating the pressure. If I'm in flush mode, it's actually bypassing the regulator and just going straight through the line. That's why it you call it flushing through. Okay.
Correct.
So righty standard, loosen or left, you're in flush mode. Okay, now I want to talk about how do these work? How does what is going on inside the regulator?
Yeah. Basically, I've got a knob on the bottom here, which is going to allow us to increase our water column or decrease our water column. Again, turning it right is going to increase the water column. Turning it left is going to decrease. And what I'm ultimately doing, and I've got one sitting over here, we can kind of talk a little bit more in detail, is on this bottom section, you have a spring. And so when I turn that knob to the right, I'm compressing that spring. So I'm building up preload, more force on that spring.
Okay.
What that's doing is that's putting pressure on our bladder.
Should we open that up?
So the higher that spring pressure, the more water it's going to take to overcome on the top side. And
it
so
puts pressure underneath and it's pushing that bladder.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
So that bladder is sitting here. So that water pressure builds up on top. There's a gate here, a rocker arm with a gate. The higher that spring is compressed, the more water it is allowed to flow in the top shell of the regulator. When that water equalizes the pressure of that spring, this rocker arm here seals off that inlet gate.
Okay.
And then you're now at that pressure that you've dialed in on your spring.
So if I'm at, say I want to be at 8, like my ball height, if I want my ball height to be at 8 inches, I'm turning that to where it gets to about, 8 inches. That compresses that spring to where, I don't know what 8 inches is here, but
Yep.
It compresses that spring. It puts pressure on the bottom of the bladder. The incoming water is putting pressure on the top of the bladder.
Yep, and you have that pressure load along that entire surface of that bladder.
Okay.
When that equalizes, it closes this rocker arm here.
That closes off. Okay.
And that seals the inlet port.
Okay.
As you get demand on the system,
once birds are drinking, you might notice the ball drop a little bit. It's always trying to regulate at that 8 inches what you've got it set at.
Correct. And so you've dropped your pressure on the top of the bladder, which then allows that spring to open that gate back up, allow more water to flow in until it gets back to that equilibrium.
With the new eFlush regulator, I know it comes with an optional solenoid that will make this, instead of a manual operation, it'll turn it into an automatic regulator that you can actually program into a control. And like if I set it to flush at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon every day, it'll do it automatically. How does that work with the new eFlush?
That's correct. So we've got a solenoid that screws directly into this knob here. So this cover here, you unscrew that to the left and remove that cover.
Okay.
And that allows you access to another threaded port here.
Okay.
And that solenoid is going to now screw onto that threaded port.
Directly onto it, okay.
That's correct.
And then you wire it in and...
Wired into one of our controllers.
Okay.
And, our touchscreen controller, you can program schedules throughout the day of how you want to flush your lines.
Okay, great. All right, well, thank you for joining us today. We hope to do more of these videos in the future. If there's anything that you would like an explanation on, write a comment below, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks.